Morning. Hello, hello. Can you guys hear me? Hey, Stefano, Elias. Thanks for stopping by. I'm just finishing up this setup. Just want to make sure that it seems like every time that I start the stream, I have a new. I'm setting up something new, but I think we're getting there. I just got a few new things, and I think it's gonna be a little bit better. Hopefully, the sound is better. You let me know. Hey, Simon. Hey, Brecky. How's it going? Cool. All right, so it looks like you guys can hear me and you can see me. That's great. Alrighty. So for today, what I'm planning to do is finish up this scene, the lighthouse scene. I know it doesn't look like much right now, but the idea is to keep it simple, keep it low poly, and I guess part of the complexity of this scene is going to be given by the texture or the poly paint. So we're going to get into that. We're going to finish the kind of like the floating island with the rocks. I'm going to show you a cool technique as well using nanomesh. And yeah, I think we can go ahead and start. So let's see. I have an issue with my Restream app. Let me just double check. It looks like nobody's watching on either of the three channels. Just write to Kyle. 1 second. Alrighty. So yeah, for some reason is not showing up. So I cannot see anything but the uh, the the Facebook, no, the YouTube chat. I can see it on the screen, but it's a little bit hard for me to read it. Sound 100% good, awesome. I'm just trying to read the chat from the actual screen that I'm recording. Um, awesome. How is the new streaming setup? Yeah, it's all good. It's really good. Well, hopefully it sounds better and it actually looks better. So I got one of those lamp panels that I can control from the deck. It's pretty cool. So I can turn it down or up from a couple of buttons here. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, so it's really easy to switch between scenes. It's just make my life easier. And this headset, the thing is, I had a pretty good microphone. I had the Rode microphone, but I'm really bad with audio. Like I really don't understand it because I cannot see it. So I really don't understand anything about audio. So a friend of mine recommended this, and because I'm kind of like animated when I speak, if I move away from the microphone, I have to normalize the audio and it just becomes a very annoying process. Whereas with this, I can just move around and the microphone sticks with me. So it's pretty good. All right, so yeah, I don't know what's going on with the chat, so I cannot read any chat except the YouTube. So bear with me, guys. I'm gonna start. I'm just gonna start with this, setting up the rest of the scene so that we can move on into the polypaint, which is I reckon that's gonna be the most exciting part of this stream. And yeah, every now and again I'll stop and I'll have a look at the chat very closely to see what's going on. But yep, let's go ahead and get started. So this is what we did in the previous stream. I just have everything separated in a few subtools. So the top, the actual glass part of the lighthouse, this little fence, and the structure of it, plus the door and some stairs. That's it. That's all we have. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue that the setup of the scene. I'm gonna create a floating island. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring in a sphere. So append sphere, select that. I'm gonna go into perspective off so that I can position it right there, scale it up, and this is gonna determine the size of the island. So the first thing I want to do is flatten the top bit, so I can do that with the deformation or the deformers or modifiers. Are they called the deformers, modifiers? These ones, deformers or modifiers. We're gonna go to the flatten, click on that, click on the top control, and just flatten this out like so. All right, maybe not all the way, something like that should be fine. Click on the cog icon, accept the changes, and there we go. Now I'm gonna hold the Alt key and just push the pivot upwards a bit so that I can just sort of fit it where I want it to, and then I can just scale that island. I want to keep it, you know, I want to do something rather simple for the island, so I'm not gonna make it too complicated, but obviously it's not gonna be a rounded shape. So I'm just gonna squish it down a bit, right? And then we can start tapering it from the top. So I'm gonna select the taper deformer, click on that, just to modify the, give it a bit of curvature in both sides and that sort of thing. I click OK. So it's not perfectly flat. And now we can just go with the move brush. So let me just bring in, hang on a second, I think I need to reset my custom UI. There we go. All right, and I'm gonna bring in my move brush. I have a decent amount of polygons, so I might wanna reduce that. Because it was a sphere or a primitive, I can just go to the geometry subpalette or the geometry palette, subpalette, and I can reconstruct, hopefully. Nope, because we have triangles here at the top. Doesn't matter, we can just do a quick zero mesh. And we can actually reduce the amount of polygons a bit more. I mean, this is not necessary. I'm gonna turn it into a Dynamesh and, but just so that we can work a little bit better. It's always better when you're blocking out stuff to work with less polygons or a low resolution. All right, so that seems to work fine, and I have symmetry enabled now. And with the move brush, I'm gonna go ahead and actually, everything seems quite big. So you can see this is something that you might have seen in the past that might happen. If you have something that is really big in the scene, you might have reached the maximum draw size. So if you want to do large proportional changes with a brush that is this big, you won't be able to do it. So there are two things you can do. You can unify everything together, and you can bring in the gizmo, click on this pizza icon, as Joseph calls it, and just scale everything down at once, which is probably what I will do. But you don't have to do it. If you want to keep working at the scale that you're working, you can go to the preference palette, and there is a draw subpalette here. And the draw palette allows you, within the preference palette, allows you to increase that maximum size. So you right now is at 1000, and also the dynamic brush scale. So I would put this, let's say, to 15,000, for example, and this one to 1000 if you wanted to. And that allows you to increase the brush size way more than this. But I think I'm just gonna make sure I select everything, all my subtools, and scale them down a bit. Quite a bit actually. And now we can tweak these. So I want to push the sides down a bit, and I want to push the center up so that it looks like, it's almost like the lighthouse is a bit of, in a hill or something like that, which makes sense, right? Bit of smooth brush. All right, and now I want to select this area in the middle of the, let's call it the island, yeah. So Alt click, and I push down. Also, I need to enable AccuCurve so that we can get a very pointy. We can pull it like this, and I'm just gonna give it a bit more shape. So imagine like this is a piece of the earth that just floated about. That's what I like about these about lighthouses. For some reason, I feel they're very easy to make up a cool story around them. I don't know if it has anything to do with the solitude of the lighthouse keeper, or the fact that it's, you know, so remote some of the times. It's an interesting element that I reckon can, you know, spark some creativity. So that's what I'm thinking as I do this. Just a floating island from an isolated tower that is floating about. All right. So I think this is good. There's a couple of things that I would like to do, but we get to that in a second. So this is just the block out. In fact, we can push things in a bit more because we're gonna add rocks all around it. Let's just try that. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and remesh this by half, and we get something not ideal here at the bottom. Let's do another one. I'm gonna smooth this area. Try it again. Okay, that's a bit better. All right. So now what I want to do is split this and start using some polygroups. I'm gonna use the select lasso. I'm gonna hide certain areas. Make sure I have double enabled so that I can see both sides. So holding Control and Shift. Go. I think that's looking good. A bit more. Try to be a little bit precise with this. There we go. So let's assign a different polygroup. And now this polygroup at the top is going to be obviously where the grass would be. I'm thinking of like one of those, you know, grass from the summer, which is very yellowish, burnt out. And then the rest is going to be rocky and yeah, just mud or whatever it is. So what I'll do now is start creating the assets that I'm going to use to populate this rocky area. So you've probably seen me do this in the past. I've done it a few times here in the streams, but you know, as a quick refresher, it won't take long. So I'm gonna, in a different subtool, I'm gonna select sphere. That's a dynamic sphere already, and I'm just gonna use gizmo, scale this up a tiny bit, and I'm gonna use maybe this time I'm gonna use the clip brushes as well as the trim dynamic to, you know, set a quick rock type without symmetry. So just clipping some parts of this sphere, rotating the angles, very random. We'll fine tune it later. I just want to make sure I have something that is sharp. I think that looks all right. Let's go ahead and increase the dynamesh. Dynamesh that. I'm gonna run a clay polish. Actually, let's run a polish first. We can. Maybe I just exaggerated the dynamesh. I'm gonna reduce it a bit. Let's go for polish. Oh, that's too much. I'm gonna keep reducing it. I exaggerate the dynamesh quite a bit. All right, now let's polish. All right, polish and clay polish. Cool. So we have a, you know, a cleaner starting point. I'm gonna bring in the trim dynamic. I love this brush. I use it all the time for this type of stylized assets. And I'm just going to try to balance a little bit the details and these planes with the bigger planes. So I have some big planes that I did with the clip brush. So now the idea is to go ahead and balance it out with some other smaller planes. Not everywhere, just make sure you keep that balance in mind. And some of the times after you finish doing this clipping, there are gonna be areas that need more work, and probably that's just a good idea to focus on that area and refine those bits just with the trim dynamic. You can also use the edge polish. The trim dynamic is a bit more random in a sense. The edge polish will respect more the original angle of the plane that you choose, but you know, I find that this one is pretty decent. I mean, for this type of work, is just excellent. It gives you the enough randomness, but also enough control. And what I mean about randomness is that if you do it over an edge, it's gonna be, you know, you're gonna have less control of which side or which plane the actual brush goes to. Whereas with the edge polish, you have a bit more control. But both are pretty good for this. I'm gonna increase the size a bit more. If you want to get fancy, you can also use another trim dynamic or another trim brush, which is called the trim adaptive. So this one is a little bit crazy, so you need to spend some time trying to figure out how this works. But basically, it's very similar to the trim to the trim dynamic, but this adaptive will adapt to the plane. So I'm just gonna do a redynamic and try to show you this a bit better, maybe with a bit more resolution. So what this one does, and I actually like to use this with an alpha, square alpha or a hard alpha. What it does is just going to trim at the same time that it sort of carves into the plane, creating a new plane. So I know that that's a bit hard to, well, not hard, but maybe I'm just explaining it wrong. But as you trim, it sort of, if it doesn't find a plane, this brush, it will create a plane, and then it's gonna trim that plane that it creates. So I'm gonna exaggerate it here, so just to see if that makes sense. See? So it's I'm putting a lot of pressure but this brush is creating this new plane, and it's trying to flatten that plane. So I like to use this with a hard brush so that it creates these sort of like, you know, nice angles or sharp angles, and that creates a very, there we go, that's what I was talking about. It creates these crevices that I like more natural, and it's very, very quick, and also it has pressure, so you can create very interesting shapes. Actually, this is one of the brushes that I use as a base to create some of the brushes that I have in the rock pack. I don't know if you've seen that. It's on the ZBrush guides. You can have a look at that. But I use this brush as a starting point, and then I work with the modifiers and the alphas to fine-tune and create like very specific uses for this brush. So I'm just gonna keep it simple. I don't want to do too much damage to this rock. Again, I'm gonna try to keep it generic since I'm gonna reuse this asset quite a bit. But that's another reason why I'm trying to tackle every angle, just so that I can rotate things around and it makes sense. Another thing you can do when doing this type of assets is to switch obviously between the two brushes. I'm gonna do a quick dynamic again, and I'm gonna switch. This is okay. I want to show you two things. So this is kind of like the second pass, and then I can go ahead and refine with the damp standard brush, sharpen some edges, that sort of thing. But one thing that I like to do is assign the trim dynamic or the trim adaptive, sorry, to my current brush, like I have it right now. But if you hold Shift, you can actually change the smooth brush to anything you want. So if I click on that one, I can actually assign the trim dynamic. So I basically have the two brushes all at once when I'm working, and if I want to use the trim dynamic, I just press Shift and use that as my smooth brush. So that's a really interesting workflow if you're just doing this type of things. And you can set up like a macro that auto selects all of that, and then another macro to go back to the normal smooth brush, and that's pretty cool. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna go to trim dynamic, and I'm just gonna refine things a tiny bit, especially in the new planes that the trim adaptive generated. Just want to get rid of that sort of like step, so that's steps here, but it's very obvious what the polygons are. And then the rest, the clay polish should take care of it, and it should, you know, smooth things out a bit in general. So I'm just gonna get rid of that. By the way, if you want to get rid of this effect of the alpha straight away, or as you do it, you can refine the stroke in the stroke palette. You can refine that so that there is less gap between each instance of the alpha, because those lines are generated because it's a, if you remember, it's a square alpha, so it gets repeated. But you see this brush is also, oh no, this brush doesn't use this alpha, but you can make it use that alpha. So all right, let's go ahead and move a little bit faster. Hopefully this is not too boring. I've done this type of rocks in the past quite a few times. All right, so I'm going to do a clay polish, and as you see, that sort of sharpens everything, makes it a little bit more stylized. You can obviously go back and refine things, but for the most part, it looks pretty good. I'm not gonna worry too much about more details because, you know, I think this one looks fine as it is. All right, so the next thing is I wanna maybe duplicate it so that I have the original, and I'm gonna take this one, and I'm not gonna paint it right now. I'm gonna paint everything at once. So I'm gonna go to the enable polyframe, going to decimation master, and I'm gonna pre-process current. And while ZBrush does that, let me check the chat. I still don't know why it's going on here, but can you also do clay buildup? Hang on, guys, need to double check. Mr. Sanson, how's it going? Boa noite, bom dia, tudo bem? Tudo bem, cara. Can you also use the clay buildup and use alt to create the edges? You can totally do that. The clay buildup brush, Comics Legend, is more to build up volume, whereas the trim dynamic and the trim adaptive is you already have the volume, you're kind of like refining it in a way. So you can totally do that. You can start with the clay buildup to generate the volume, and then you can move to the trim dynamic and all that. All right, cool. So yeah, you know what? I'm gonna restart. Is decimated lighter than ZBrush? You can make it lighter, definitely. The decimation process is just not gonna give you quads. So I'm gonna reduce this quite a bit. Let's say to 3% decimate current, and you'll see you get all these triangles. But for the most part, ZBrush preserves the sharpness of those details. So I think this one maybe it is too much, but you know, for an insert mesh, which is what I'm gonna turn this into, is pretty good. We can do another clay polish, see what's happened. Nah, leave it as it is. So yeah, you can do the ZBrush. The ZBrush is gonna try to keep you, or is going to give you quads. So it depends on what you want to achieve. The ZBrush is something that you would use if you wanna turn your mesh into a more, if you wanna go through the subdivision approach, basically. So with this one, if I subdivide, because they're triangles, it's gonna be a bit messy, and you're just gonna start seeing some artifacts if I start to sculpt details. Whereas with the quad or the ZBrush, you generate quads, and it's gonna be easier to subdivide the model and add details. Hey Doggy, and yeah, about time to get Pablo and stream in Portugal. I'm going to try one day to do a Portugal stream. All right, so now we have that. I'm going to go ahead and create a new brush. So go to the insert mesh, create new. So now we have this. I just want to insert it quite a bit. Again, I'm going a little bit faster here. All of these I've covered in the past, so you can go to previous streams, and you know, it covers all this process. All right, so now that I have the right tool, let's go back to our island, and we can do a couple of things. We can turn this into a nano mesh brush, see what that gives us, and then we can take it from there. Or we can also, you know, start manually placing these rocks, which is going to take more time, but it gives you more control. However, I want to show you something that I haven't tried it, but again, that's what I like these sessions, because I like to try things that I haven't tried and see if it works. So what I'll do is I'm going to duplicate the island, right? So I have this duplicate, we're going to solo mode, and I'm going to do a series measure, but I'm going to control, in fact, let me just subdivide this one more time so that we have more, maybe more than that. I don't know, again, I don't know if this is going to work. All right. So we have more polygons, but what I want to do is do a series measure, but control the size of the polygons by using polypaint with the series measure. I know this might not make much sense right now, but let's give it a go. I'm going to select the standard brush. Always lose that one. Standard brush. And I'm going to click on this use polypaint. So under the series measure palette, we have this use polypaint, and this is just a simple way to control the density of the polygons that ZBrush is going to try to place in the newly created mesh. So I'm going to click on use polypaint, right? And straight away, I'm going to turn CAD, enable RGB in my standard brush, and also get rid of lazy mouse, turn off polyframe. So basically, right now we have a poly density of 2, and then you can control this slider, and as you can see, the color changes, right? So I'm going to go for a very, very low count of polygons around the bottom, and you'll see why. Actually, at the top. Yeah, let's go for something like this. So around this area, I want big pieces of rock. Is that what I want? Let me just think. I want to make a smaller ones towards the top. No, towards the bottom. Yeah, let's leave it like that. We'll give it a go. It might not even work. So this doesn't have to be very precise. Just a quick pass should do. I'm gonna change this to, say, almost 1. This area here. So you see the polypaint is almost white. So blue indicates that, well, it's gonna tell ZBrush that we want to try to keep things big at this point, or we don't need to have as many polygons around this area. And red means we have quite a bit of density. So I'm just gonna make 2, yeah, towards the tip. So, and perhaps at the top as well. Maybe less than that. And you can totally use this feature as well to define, you know, certain areas of, like, if you're doing a character, for example, that has the head and the body all together in one single piece, and you want to retopologize it using the series measure as a starting point, you can totally use this feature and, let's say, put a very red color or very dense set of a color that indicates ZBrush that you want to have a more dense mesh in that area, and you can just paint the face, for example, and the rest could be a blue color, and that when you do the series measure, it's going to try to keep more information or more density around the face. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Now let's see if it works. let's see if it works. I'm gonna turn off half for the time being. I'm gonna leave adaptive, although we don't really need adaptive because there's no many crevices or anything complicated. I'm gonna click series measure. All right, so you see it tries to do it does a pretty good job. Or it did a pretty good job. Sometimes it just gives you these weird artifacts, so we have to keep going at it. But for the most part, it gives you like small polygons here and larger polygons here. I'm gonna cut it in half. And half. All right, so we have a few. I mean, it's not great. It's not very obvious. And I think after doing the first series measure, we got rid of the polypaint. So let me just undo that again. I'm gonna be a little bit more obvious with the polypaint here. Again, it might not work, but we'll give it a go. All right, so I'm gonna cut it in half, or you can actually set the amount of polygons that you are hoping to get, but let's go for this. Use polypaint. All right, I think that's a little bit better. Now we can cut it in half. All right. Okay, I think that's good. We could potentially get rid of a few lines. Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna try it one more time with this. So I'm gonna reduce density around this area even more. Right, and do a zero mesh. All right, I think this one is what I'm after. Cool. I know it took a while, but we are now closer to what I'm trying to do. So as you can see, we have some larger polygons here towards the top and smaller polygons towards the bottom area. So now we can take the brush that we created, the insert brush, right? It's just a normal insert brush. I want to turn that into a nano mesh brush, okay? And we actually have to create a few polygroups again. Let's do that really quickly. And I think maybe a bit more. Let me just refine this quickly. All right, and all right, so we have two different polygroups, and we have now a nano mesh brush that contains our rock, and we have some polygroups to assign this mesh. Nano mesh, here we go. All right, so the first thing I want to do is right click on this or any of these faces, right click to bring in my ZModeler / nano mesh brush action, and I'm going to select polygroup all so that we only apply whatever we're going to do it is going to do it just in one polygroup. So I'm going to click on the purple one, and we should get rocks everywhere. All right, so this is what I wanted to do. As you can see, hang on, it's a bit heavy. As you can see, the bottom part of this mesh has quite a big concentration of rocks, and whatever is towards the top has less concentration of the rocks. And this is happening right now because each rock is ultimately the same size, but the polygons are bigger at the top and smaller at the bottom. So when I insert this mesh, it's going to be the same mesh regardless, but it's going to be one single mesh per each one of these faces. So the smaller the face, or the smaller the faces around an area, the more compact it's going to look. Now, this is what I wanted in terms of how it's going to work. So I'm glad that it worked like that, but it's not the look that I'm looking for. So that happens because right now it's set to prop. So all rocks are the same size per each square or per each polygon, right? But what I want to do is create the size of, I want to dictate the size of the rock based on the size of the polygon. So I can change that to fit, and you'll see ZBrush is trying to fit the rock on the polygon. You can also do fill, and that's going to be a bit more obvious. And as you can see, the rocks towards the bottom are smaller than the ones at the top now because of the size of the underlying polygon. So I want to use this as a starting point. We might change that a bit, and we can scale this, and we can also play around with some pattern. So I'm going to click on this random distribution, and the larger the number, obviously the more rocks that you're going to create. I'm just going to establish that first. How much? Oops, that's too much. That's too much. That's too much. I don't want this to crash. I'm going to go for number one, right? So as you can see, it has larger rocks at the top and smaller rocks at the bottom, and I can change this to fit. I think fill would work more for this in this case. Also, you might notice that some rocks are kind of like horizontally aligned or stretch horizontally, some of them vertically, some of them on the z-axis, and that has to do with the alignment. So I'm just going to expand this holding shift, and I can play with the alignments. I think to short edge might be good, or the long edge actually. So as you can see now, all of them are sort of aligned towards the long edge. Short edge, maybe normal. Normal is not that good. I think long edge is probably the best starting point for this. And again, we are just getting started with the customization of these rocks. I'm gonna go ahead and scale the length, the height a bit, and the width. All right. Maybe I actually need to reduce the amount of rocks. This is too much. All right. And then we can go ahead and increase the variation in width and height and length. Right. So we have more variation. You can increase the size as well. And also, I want to change the rotation. So this is, I mean, if you could animate in ZBrush, this will be like the first thing that I would try. Just animating this like that. It's pretty cool. I'm gonna also do some variation so that not everything rotates at the same degree, more random. So just add a bit of rotation as well as variation to that rotation in all the rocks. And I think that looks all right. I want to increase maybe the length to make it more interesting. All right. So once you have the setup and the asset, as you can see, it's pretty easy to just manipulate this and get something going that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and click one to mesh. So in the inventory, expand that, click one to mesh. In fact, yeah, we can just do that. Let's do one to mesh, and that creates the actual mesh or the actual set of polygons, right? But I'm gonna get rid of the base mesh. So I'm gonna hold Control and Shift, holding Control and Shift to hide these, invert that. I'm gonna hide the other bit. Go, and I'm just going to split hidden. All right. Cool. So now that we have these two, let's just turn on the original, get out of solo mode. We have these rocks, but this particular set of polygons, just the rocks, are 1 million polygons. Okay, so this is happening for a few reasons. Obviously, it's a rock that had quite a few polygons, and we just duplicated everywhere. It's gonna be a little bit heavy. Not that ZBrush cannot handle it, but maybe the computer cannot handle it for with the stream as well. So I'm gonna do something very quick. I'm gonna bring in the move brush, and I wanna readjust without the symmetry. Readjust the position of these rocks a tiny bit. You know, the rock that is sticking out. And let me just check, because I think Kyle replied about the chat. Cool. Let's see. Hi. On the right click was very custom. How can I import brush into ZBrush? Also, how do I intentionally use polypaint? Chance we can pick here. All right. So Phil Berex, I'm not sure about that question. No idea. How do you import brush in ZBrush? To import brushes in ZBrush, you can just click on the brush thumbnail from the brush palette, or just go to the brush palette, click load, and that's it. You can just load whatever brush, as long as it's a brush, right, made for ZBrush. It has to be a ZBrush brush. All right, so all I'm doing right now is deforming what we already have. Just to add a bit more intentionality on this design, that is not completely random. I think that looks all right. Let me just check the chat. All right. So what I want to do is obviously go ahead and simplify this or optimize this. I can do that with the decimation again. But even though if we go to solo, if we use the decimation master, there's a bunch of rocks that are intersecting. So there's a lot of geometry that is kind of like useless. So I'm gonna hide halves just to show you. So all of this geometry here in the middle is completely useless, right? Because you're not gonna see any of that. It's not useless if you're actually pulling the pieces away, because you have like the full piece. But right now, for the purpose of this, is useless, and that's adding a lot of geometry. So what I'll do is do a process called remesh by union. So that's a process from the Boolean update of ZBrush. So pay attention to this area right here. So the active point poly count is 1.2 million. So if I go to deformers, click on the cog icon, this one right here, remesh by union. I'm gonna click on that and wait until ZBrush does its thing, and pay attention at that number down the bottom, right? As you can see, nothing changed, but now we have 373, much more manageable. And I'm gonna click accept. And now if I go ahead and hide this half, voila, there's no intersecting geometry. So basically what this process does is anything that is intersecting, ZBrush is going to run an union, Boolean union operation. So it's going to connect all of these edges. So if I go ahead and smooth this, it's going to be a single mesh, as you can see, right? That's kind of like the best option at this point. If you run a ZRemesher will respect the continuity of the topology. So ZRemesher is going to actually remesh every single rock, which you could do if you wanted to, but this is probably the best way to go about it. Cool, so now we have a much more decent number of rocks that we can play with, and we can actually, add a few more. Now, I want to do a couple things. Let me just think what would be the best way to go about it. Because I want some rocks to actually be floating about, like falling. Just small rocks and a few other feature rocks. Let's see. All right, so it looks like the app is working for Kyle. So I'm just going to restart the chat app, so that I can actually see your question, guys. Let me just double check. I'm gonna restart that. I tried that before, but it didn't work. I restarted it and good. Let's see. Oh, looks like now it's working. Don't know what it was. Thanks so much, Kyle. I restarted again and now it works. All right, now I can see chats from everywhere. Cool. So Tetsuo Oshima. What the remesh union is pretty cool. I never used that. Yeah, the ZRemesher by union is one of the best tools to simplify it, and is basically using the booleans but in a single click, right? All right. So now that we have that, I'm going to select my other mesh, the one that we used to create those rocks. Go into solo mode. And before I go into solo mode, I'm just gonna click. Right now I have the second mesh selected. You'll see it's kind of like overlapping here. I'm just gonna pull this down like this, okay? And I want to go into solo mode, and I wanna create just another polygroup in here, so a different polygroup. All right, so we have this white polygroup, and I'm gonna use the same technique. I'm gonna go to my ZBrush. Let's do a quick save just in case. And I'm gonna click and drag to create rocks only in this polygroup or in this area. All right, so now we can go to the nano mesh. We can do feed, we can do fill. I think prop in this case is not too bad. I'm gonna vary the size of all of these ones, right? And also change the overall size as well. And then we can use the random distribution. I just want a few rocks like that. Okay, so this is really cool because let me just show you why. We can, with using this other polygon, this other mesh, and this is the reason I keep these two separate. So I have the one that I'm going to use for the island, like the base of the island, and I have this other mesh that I'm using to create stuff, right? So with this one, right now I have a bunch of little rocks, and what is cool about this is that I can tell ZBrush to hide the placement. So this switch here, show placement, is enabled by default. I can turn it off, and now it's gonna show me. Yeah, I mean, you should be able to see to hide everything, but because we have polygroups, it's doing it to the whole thing. But anyway, this will do, and we're gonna split it anyway. So if you hide it, now you cannot see the placement, but the polygons are still there, right? So you're not affecting the rocks, you're affecting the placement of the rocks. So if we take the brush, the move brush, we can manually tweak this, right? And it's kind of like a particle system in ZBrush. And this is the reason I love this technique. So all I'm doing really is just manipulating the underlying geometry, the underlying polygons of that island, but I can judge where these rocks are placed. Right? Now turn off symmetry. And this is a really cool way to generate, yeah, kind of like particles. So I use these to create, you know, water drops. In more recently, in one of my portfolio pieces that I made called the Jimmy, the Jimmy's decision. So Jimmy, it's just a kind of like cinematic look with a cartoonish style. You can go to the, let me just show you, just in case. I want to show you a practical example of how to use that, this technique. So in my ArtStation, so this is one example. I use this quite a bit, and this is the one that I was talking about. So for the Japanese monkey, I use the same technique to create these floating particles. I just create a bunch of cubes and planes, and then use the random distribution to assign different planes like this. So these are like little planes, distorted planes on bigger planes to create this effect. All of these particles are done within ZBrush, not rendered in ZBrush, but created in ZBrush, and they're actual geometry with an alpha. So that's one way. And this is the other one that I recently used. So it's not very obvious here, but all of these drops, yeah, in the window, that's actual geometry that is refracting the light. So it's a bit more realistic in that sense. So all of these drops are generated by using the same technique. So I just want to show you. I wanted to show you this technique in a, that is very practical. And because you still have the control over the nanomesh, right? You can just go ahead and decrease or increase your particles in a way. All right, so let's go ahead and create these. Actually, I want to make them smaller. I don't want them to compete too much with the rest. I'm gonna try to add a few, and then we manually can add a few more. So let's make it a bit smaller. Okay, and one to mesh, one to solo, going to hide everything but those. All right, split hidden. That way we have our mesh to generate more if we wanted to. Get out of solo mode. All right, and we can obviously, go ahead and reposition some of these ones. But at this point, if you use the move brush, you're actually moving the rocks. So if I have a small brush and I pull this down, it's going to actually distort the brush. Whereas before, we were distorting the placement, and the rock will consistently stay the original size that we define with the nanomesh. All right, so that's pretty good. I reckon just to finish up these rocks, I'm going to select. You know what? We can actually just import the one we had. This one that is already decimated. I'm gonna copy this mesh, go to the working file, paste, and this is just a single rock that we can manually place, kind of like a more feature rock. So we can hold Control and click and drag. That's just gonna duplicate that. Control, click and drag. So these are kind of like more feature rocks that we can use. Control, click and drag. varying the size and the rotation, obviously, and get something going that is pretty cool. All right. We can also, isolate one of these rocks. Hold Control, click and drag, and just duplicate that single one. Wanna keep adding, and this is more like designing and getting a feel of the composition, balancing things out. I think this is working for the most part. I would spend definitely much more time at this point refining the overall composition, but I'm going to leave it as it is. Clear the mask, and I'm going to make all of these, or put this into a single folder. So I'm going to select that one, new folder, let's call it rocks, and in the folder I'm going to drop in these three. Make sure I don't have any mask. So now I can control, turn this all on and off. All right, cool. So now we have the rocks, we have the lighthouse. We can just create a couple more rocks around here. We'll do that in a second. Actually, let's just do that right now. I select this one and select only this part. Bear that. Bring the gizmo center to unmask area. Hold Control, click and drag, and this is just gonna be a bit of like oops. Ooh, let's do a quick save. Oh no. I think my tablet driver just crashed, which is great. Now I don't have. Oh no. I don't know. I don't know why it does that, but now my Wacom has no use. I have no use for the Wacom anymore. I don't know why that is. I think it's the broadcasting software that I use. I use OBS, and for some reason, just don't like. I don't know if it's the drivers, exactly why that is, but I'm having a lot of problems with that now. Every now and again, when I'm recording a tutorial, something, and it doesn't just happen with ZBrush, it happens with a few other software. When it's a very intensive task, for some reason, it just doesn't like it, and the drivers go kaput. So now I would have to restart the computer, which is gonna be annoying. So let me just see what I can do. I'm gonna try to go old school without the mouse, without the pen. Just gonna go with the mouse, just to wrap it up. I mean, we still have like an hour to go, but I don't wanna, restart things. I reckon we just leave it as it is. Yeah, I do have to. I already tried to restart the drivers. It doesn't work. But if you know anything about it, like if you know any trick to do that, let me know. That would be good. Yeah, I've tried that, manduck. You can try restarting the service in Windows Services. I've tried that. Let's just give it a go. Let's see if that works. So that Windows service. Yeah, so I've tried that, and the problem for me is that it's not even showing up in the services. So I don't even have the tablet running. So it doesn't recognize it as a tablet or anything. Yeah, it's not there. Wacom Professional Services, might be that one. I'm gonna restart it, see if it works. Restart. Hopefully it doesn't crash things. Let's see if it worked. It kind of did something. Oh, it did. Ah, brilliant. We're back to business. Yeah, so before I used to do that, and You know, it wasn't even there in the services, so that was the thing. Thanks so much, mate. That should fix the problem. Brilliant. You're back in business. Alrighty. So hopefully it's not gonna do the same thing again. So where were we? Let me just double check the chat. Thanks, Magdoc again. Comments like that Wacom driver issue happens to me too, but don't have broadcasting software though. Yeah, it's something to do with the drivers. I don't know if it's the BIOS, maybe it's the NVIDIA graphic card. I don't know. You guys probably know more about this than me. I'm just like just pressing buttons, see what happens. If it doesn't work, just try something else. But yeah, this one worked. At least I don't have to restart now. Yeah, sometimes tries. Yeah, I've done it before, so maybe that's the case. You might have to try a few times. Hey Natsumi, can I send you file? I have a small file that's doing it for you. What do you mean? A small file for what, Natsumi? For restarting Wacom? Not sure. Do I have a ArtStation? I do have a ArtStation. You can just go to Pablo. Thanks, Bin Light Games. Cool. Yep. All right. For restarting it. Yeah, that'll be cool, man. I appreciate it. I was actually planning into implementing a macro thing as well, but that would be great. All right. So let's say that we're happy with these. I'm just gonna try to move faster because I want to add some, maybe some grass with fiber mesh as well. Let's try to keep it simple again. This is going to be pretty low res anyway, and I can actually select the base. I'm gonna duplicate that. I'm gonna create my trusted OR folder for originals, and I'm gonna leave that one there. So I'm gonna push this at the top, hide it, and I'm gonna select this one. And just to give this something a bit more interesting, like a more interesting look, what I'll do is I'm gonna subdivide it quite a few times. So I have maybe more than that. Yeah, about 100,000 polygons, that should be okay. And I'm gonna do the same process that I did for the rock, but just to the entire island. So I'm gonna bring in the trim dynamic. Go. I wanna add a few pieces of geometry more randomly placed. Just sculpt some details. Another cool thing that you can do with the trim dynamic, by the way, is holding the Alt key, and that's actually gonna obviously push that trim, that polish towards you, towards the camera. That's pretty cool. All right, so the only reason I'm doing this is, and the only reason that I'm doing it quite randomly, I should have turned on back face. So let me just do that. Back face mask, so that I don't affect, in thin areas, I don't affect anything else. Right. It happened again. No. Oh yeah. No. It's all good. Now I'm like scared to press anything. I think it just happened with certain processes. But the thing is, I'm not running anything weird, and I have a Threadripper with 16 cores, so it shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so I'm gonna take this one now, and the reason I did this very randomly is because I wanna go to the decimation master, pre-process current. And then go to maybe less than that. Let's set it to 10, decimate current. Actually one less. I want to make it very stylized. So with less polygons or more decimation, it's going to be sharper edges, hopefully. A bit more than that. Let's exaggerate things a bit. If it doesn't work, we just go back what we have. So let's go for 0.5. Nope. Go for 1. All right, so that seems to work, and that gives me much more room to play with colors, and it looks more low poly. I think I'm gonna do the same thing for the rocks. So I'm gonna select the rocks, solo mode, and I'm gonna pre-process current. Remember that now this one has it doesn't have any geometry inside because we use the remesh by union. And I'm just going to, let's turn this on so that we can see it in real time. I'm gonna do 3%. Okay, that's not bad. We have 11,000. So it looks more more polygons there. The planes are more obvious. That's kind of cool, and that's kind of like what I'm after. I'm gonna repeat the process with these ones. Pre-process current didn't take that long, and decimate current, excellent, and the tiny ones as well. Pre-process, and I'll have a look at the questions. Right. Cool, and decimate current. All right, 7,000. That's pretty good. So yeah, that's pretty good. All right, so we have everything low. Let's do a quick save right now. Oh, cool. Thanks so much, Natsumi. I'm gonna save it for later. I'm gonna copy that. Let me just copy that link. I'm gonna save it for later. I'll try it out. Thank you. Alrighty. I wasn't able to find it. Best solution was able to find it to make macro that run every time you start up ZBrush. Yeah. All right, cool. So we have pretty much, in terms of modeling, we have pretty much everything. The only thing that I miss, or that I'm missing, that I would like to add is maybe some fiber mesh. But I would like to do that after I painted some stuff. So the fiber mesh will be kind of like large pieces of grass, sort of like sticking out here. I mean, that's the idea. Hopefully that works. So let's go ahead and jump into polypaint. Okay, I'm gonna start with the lighthouse because painting rocks and this area, I've done that as well. So in case we don't get to do it in this stream, at least I show you something else, something different. So let's go ahead and start with that. So I'm going to select the base, go into solo mode. Oops. Want to make sure, where's the door? Yeah. Okay, so this is the front view, right? So I want to create first a palette so that we can work a little bit faster, and then once we have the palette, I'm going to show you a cool trick to work with palette and colors in ZBrush. Once we have the palette, we can go ahead and start painting this low poly. So I'm not gonna, this is gonna look exactly like it is right now. So I'm not gonna subdivide anything. The details are gonna come from the polypaint. All right. So let's go ahead and append anything. Doesn't matter what it is. Could be this shape. Doesn't matter. Right? That shape over there. Because it doesn't matter, because we're gonna select it. Go to initialize. And initialize, we can just turn that into a Q grid. So we just need to select the resolution. I'm gonna type here, let's go for 100. You'll see why in a second. Q grid. So we have quite a few polygons here, which is good. I'm just gonna subdivide it a couple more times, right? And this is going to be the palette where we're gonna put all their colors. So I'm gonna, doesn't matter, we can just leave it here, go into solo mode, and let's go ahead and change the material to skin shade so that we have less like a more realistic representation of the colors, I'm gonna go to the standard brush. Actually, I'm gonna show you. Yeah, now let's go to the standard brush. Losing it. Standard brush. I'm gonna clone it just in case. So this is a clone of the standard brush, and I'm gonna select a hard alpha, like alpha 20. It could be anything, but this alpha 28, I think it is the good one. And freehand stroke. All right. Make sure that CR is disabled and RGB enable. And I'm going to go for a creamy type of look here. Okay. You see, this creates this type of very harsh color. I'm also gonna right click and change the focal shift towards the negative values, so that alpha is more visible, like the shape. So that's kind of like what I'm after. The other thing I want to do is turn down the RGB intensity so that we have more influence of the pressure. So 24% should give me maybe less than that. Maybe let me just see what's going on. Okay, so that's good. So let's go ahead and create some colors. So this paley look, I'm using the C color, the C key on your keyboard. Wherever you have your cursor, if you press C, it's just gonna pick up that color, and that is kind of like the color picker in ZBrush. It's the same thing as clicking anywhere here and drag it to the color. You also pick that color like that. So I'm gonna give it a few more tones, some bluish color, well, some. This is kind of like the palette for the tower, really. Maybe some more darker earth tones, saturated. Something like that. And then we can also use a more saturated red color for some of the lines that go across the lighthouse. So the way that I create these palettes is just also not only thinking about the color, but also thinking about the proportion and the relationship of the colors. So you'll see the center part is the creamy area. That is kind of because there's going to be more of that color than the rest of them, right? So I can just keep tweaking these reds because there's going to be more of these reds. All right, so that's something else, and we can use the same idea for other parts. Just going to go for some of a darker gray color here. So these grays are good. I don't think the pressure is working quite nicely, but let me see what happens. Maybe after restarting. Oh no, it is working. Cool. Because that has, I think it works. All right, and maybe some green, some yellowish tones for the grass for that area. Hopefully you can have an idea of what I'm doing. All right, so I think this is going to be my palette. Less of this yellow, but for the most part, I think it's working fine. Cool. So the way that this works is pretty simple, actually. I like to set it up in an area that I can very easily see it and pick colors. I'm gonna turn off perspective. I'm gonna put it here. Let me see if you guys can see it. Yeah, I'm gonna put it around there. That's my color palette. You can actually scale this plane, do it like a little strip, like a line, whatever you want. I think a square is fine. And I'm gonna do a screenshot of it or drop it into the canvas. So the easiest way is just to press Shift S, right? And Shift S is gonna drop whatever you have visible, drop it into the canvas. That's why I'm in solo mode, so that it doesn't drop the rest of the assets. and you can see it's just there. Okay, so now I can go ahead and select my tower again, turn off the actual plane, going to solo mode, right? And here we have the asset and we have the palette, right? So because we have this, I can just go with the C, the the key C in your keyboard, and select whatever you want. As you can see, I have it hold it like I'm pressing C, so I can just hover over the entire thing and select my palette. So I'm gonna select this as a starting point, maybe something darker like this, and I'm gonna go fill object. Fill object. Is it filling anything? Color. Fill object. Oh, it's because I have everything in a very low opacity, so I'm gonna do it manually. Doesn't matter. Oh, hang on. I forgot a very important step. We don't have enough resolution to paint, right? Because look at the polygon count, right? So this is the next step before I go ahead and paint. The next step would be to subdivide this, but because we have a very low polygon, if I press divide, it's just going to, well, let me show you. It's gonna give me this result, which is not exactly what I want. I want to keep everything very blocky. So I'm gonna undo that, and I'm going to pay attention to the polygon count or the active points, but I'm going to turn off this SMT or subdivide smooth modifier. For you guys should be right next to in the geometry palette, right next to the divide button. If we turn this off, ZBrush is going to ignore the Cadmon-Clark subdivision. It's just going to add subdivisions but keep the structure as it is. So I'm going to do a few of this. I think with 2 million polygons we have more than enough. So you see the shape is exactly the same, but now we have plenty of polygons to paint this. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just gonna go over the entire thing. You can ignore the bricks and the windows at this point. Doesn't matter. Wanna do a quick pass, and then just pressing the C key in your keyboard, and go ahead and maybe just smaller brush size. You know, try to establish the color palette that you wanna go for. So obviously gonna be a bit more damage and a bit more dirty towards the bottom, or that's kind of like what I would expect from this Lighthouse. And you don't have to be restricted to the palette that you set here. Once you start blending colors, you can also pick them from this area. So you can press C around here. But one of the key things, at least for me in this type of style, is to maintain a very hard alpha. So the one that we have, I think it works fine. I have to map my key to my control to make things faster, but I'll do that after. Let's see how this is going with everything else. Maybe even darker, yeah, towards the bottom. And I have a feeling that we could actually use more. We can subdivide it I don't know, maybe 2 million is nice. It's fine. It's fine. Let's keep working as we have it. I'm gonna add some dirt around here. All right, so this could be the most boring part to watch, but there's no much workflow or technique to discuss. This is just me, like deciding where the colors should be. There's no real workflow other than just painting the assets that you already have. Maybe with a large brush. I block colors in the same way that I block, anything else in ZBrush. We just, if I'm doing color, large brushes is always the go-to. Maybe some dripping dirt as well from the windows. Not all of them. And let's just refine it with the same color. All right. That's kind of like the idea. Let's go ahead and do the red colors just to make it a bit more interesting. So we can go ahead and actually, before we do that, let's paint. No, let's do that first. So I'm going to hold Control and I'm going to bring everything just to try to find out what would be the best way to do it. I think I'm going to do lines like this. So covering the window like so, and this one as well. And then I can make this part as well red. Maybe invert that. I'm going to refine make the red lines a bit smaller. Right? So this would be red. So let's go ahead and we're going to override this a bit, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to start with the dark color. The process is the same. We just have a mask that is protecting some of the areas here. Here at the top. If you guys have any question about this process, I'm happy to take a little break and answer the questions as well. Again, it's pretty straightforward. If there's anything in particular, I'm happy to address it if I know the answer, but this is a pretty straightforward process. I want to make sure I refine the borders. All right, so let's clear the mask. This is looking quite all right. That's kind of like the look that I was going for. Again, this is kind of like an idea that I have in my mind. I don't know if the Lighthouse are actually like that. I think this one is slightly larger, so let's add a bit more. The top one is a bit thicker than the one at the bottom. Want to keep it a bit more consistent. Cool. Clear that mask. All right, so that's looking good. Again, pretty simple. This is kind of like the look that I'm going for, very low res. The texture is going to be very washed out, like you can see the strokes a bit. That's kind of like what I'm trying to achieve here. I'm going to give it, give the windows some love because right now they're sort of like getting lost in the color. I'll do that then and I'll have a look at the chat in a second. So I'm holding, let's go into polyframe. I'm going to hold Control and Shift with the rectangular selected to isolate those polygons, as well as, actually those are the ones that I'm looking for. I'm going to mask this, invert that mask, and I'm going to, give it a, maybe, let's go for a more of a rock color to see if that makes things. One thing that you can do when doing this type of poly paint and working with mask is actually get rid of the mask, as in hide the mask, so you can see a real, one-to-one, like a real representation of the color that you're applying with the surroundings, because right now everything's darker because of the mask. So I have it mapped to my Shift H E, but for you guys, it should be under the masking palette. If you click this view mask, so if I call Control H, it just hides the mask, but the mask is still there, so you can really see what you're doing. I think this color should work fine. Just gives enough contrast. Right, so that's cool. Let's add a bit of dark color, very soft towards the bottom. All right, that's cool. Let's go ahead and clear the mask, and I'm going to select these crosses. Okay, invert the mask, Control H to hide it, and those crosses are going to be probably wood. So let's go for something like wood. All right, so that's cool. I think this is going to be a single color. I don't need to add more highlights or anything. That's working fine as it is. Alrighty, so that's cool. Let's clear the mask and do the same thing for the actual window. So I think I selected all the windows. Yep, Control, invert the mask, Control H to hide it. And this one is going to be obviously reflecting sky, which is going to be blue. So I'm going to use blue. You can actually fake some kind of reflection with a white color and a very small brush. See, it's very tiny, just faking some reflections here. All right, that's not bad. All right. Let's have a look at the chat. I'm gonna do a quick save. Let's have a look. Very brilliant. No worries. Glad you like it. Almost Bob Ross. It's a long way to go. Long way to go. But he's definitely one of the influence that I had when I was a kid. You can actually, by the way, if you're just talking about the picking up the color like palette like this, you can actually do it from an image. So if you bring in an image and you want to pick up the exact color of an image, you can do that. You just need to bring it into the well, you can project it into a plane like this, exactly like I did, or you can keep it in the lightbox. All you have to do in order to pick the color of the image is the same thing that I'm doing by holding the Alt key. So you can just press Alt and drag it from here and pick up the exact same color. So that's super cool. And that also allows you to pick up the shading of the material if you wanted to. So in other words, let me just show you because it's pretty cool. So if I click anywhere here and I drag, you'll see I'm just selecting that color, right? So it's a bunch of different colors. Now let me change to a different material, right? So this is a yellow material that I use sometimes. If I click and drag, it's picking up the color, right? You'll see the color is still the cream color, the red color, etc. Right? So it's picking up the actual color. If you want to pick up color and material information, all you have to do is drag it, like I just did, but then you hold the Alt key, and it's also picking up the color plus the material information. So right now I'm choosing color and material just by holding the Alt key, and that is the same way as if you have an image, you can just do the same thing. You can pick up the color from the image. So being like now, the question I got at the moment is related to Retopo because this is making me pull my hair out. Yeah, it's not. This is not meant to be production asset. This is just for an illustration. It's a concept really. So if you want to go about topology or thinking about topology, it will be I mean the topology for the Lighthouse itself is pretty clean, so you can just go to the lowest subdivision level, which is going to be exactly the same thing that you see here, and then work your way up. But for the rest, it will be more manual, I guess. Hey Pablo, I missed you at the Mega Dev the other week. The Mega Dev, what was that? I wasn't even aware of that. I don't know if you're talking about the PAX in Melbourne, but I wasn't aware of Mega Dev. You usually texture in ZBrush or do you use another software? Depending on the project. ZBrush is, as you can see, it's pretty powerful. It's just a matter of figuring out what you want to do with it, but it's pretty powerful. For more realistic and more complex textures, I use Substance Painter. I've used Mari in the past. It's just like another thing to learn, but I'm not, in Mari. But ZBrush. Oh no, I think. Oh, I'm gonna have to use that that macro. I'm gonna have to restart this again. No good. My tablet driver died again. And it only happens when I do the streams, which is very, very annoying. So Wacom, restart. Let's see what happens. In the meantime, I'm just gonna keep answering you guys' questions. I think it just restarted it, but okay, all good. We're back in business. Usually texture in ZBrush, yeah, everybody needs a friend. Rossi was great. Using ZBrush is just for art design and texture for Maya and CIE. Use it as an object and retopologize in other software. Yeah, you can use it as a base mesh and retopologize whatever you want. You can use Topogon, I think is one, which is give you pretty good results. You can use anything really. I mean, you're not restricted to anything. You could do the whole thing somewhere else and bring it to ZBrush and just use polypaint. It's whatever you're comfortable with, I think. All right, I'm gonna do. I'm gonna isolate. No, I think I have. No, I do. So I'm gonna isolate all of these bricks. You know what? I think it's easy if I just isolate everything but the bricks. There's a little tiny bit of isolated polygons somewhere. Let's turn on double just to double check. All right, so I isolated all the bricks. I'm gonna give it a single polygroup so that it's easy to isolate it later on if we need to. Create a mask. Oops. Let's clear the mask. Isolate it. Mask everything. Bring back everything in. All right. So I'm gonna hide the mask. And for this, I just wanna maybe find a darker color for the red areas and just paint a tiny bit more, like, or actually maybe it should be lighter. And then we just do some shadows. We just paint some shadow, cast shadow. Again, I don't know if you guys can see this in the recordings. It's very subtle. This is slightly different color, so like it's more exposed, so I would assume it's more damaged. There's the bricks in there. The same thing goes for these bricks. I'll make them lighter. And I'm going to increase the RGB intensity because right now I'm painting with 3%, so it's going to take a while. All right, some here at the top. How are we with time? All right, plenty of time. I think we can finish it up. I'm gonna go a little bit faster here and stop talking much. I mean, I'm gonna try to not branch out too much and just concentrate on what I'm doing. All right. The other thing I want to do is invert that mask. So now only the bricks are masked, and I'm gonna hide that as well. And now I can just go with a darker color for the red and saturate it. I tend to go for saturation when it's when I'm going for shadows. So more saturated shadows. Color gets more saturated towards the darker areas. Maybe this is too much. All right. Just adding a bit of patch, slightly darker certain areas. I know this is too much, but I just want to paint it like this, and then I'll refine the outer areas. Right, so now we can take some adjacent colors. All right, I'm gonna do the same thing here for the ones at the bottom, starting with a color like this. Adding some, I mean, the only reason I'm doing this is, might not be the most realistic approach, but I would assume there's some accumulation of dirt around these bricks that are like sticking out, and also, you know, this is kind of like painting an ambient occlusion in a way, adding some shadow, and that's just gonna help it stand out a bit more, which is always good. I'm always up for creating contrast. I think that's the most important thing in an image, creating contrast. Hey, I think we're getting closer there. All right, so I think we are ready to move on. So the rest are going to be a bit simpler. I think not as complex as what I just did, although it's not very complex. So let's go ahead and select another subtool. This is going to be probably, for this one we have the symmetry activated, so it's going to be pretty easy. I'm going to paint it this red color. That's pretty good. All right, let's go to the top here. Well, it's going to be red. Oh, we haven't actually subdivided this, so I think 10,000 is more than enough for this piece. Now the great thing about this style, like very, very painterly style, is that you can actually go ahead and paint some highlights if you wanted to, like that. But I'm just gonna keep it simple. But you could do it, which is I quite like it actually. But this is gonna be probably finished up in Keyshot, we'll say. All right, so there we go. Now this one is gonna be tricky. So let's subdivide this a few times. All right, and it's gonna be red, obviously. That's fine. But then we have polygroups, so I'm gonna hide everything but, hang on, let me just turn off symmetry. Everything but the windows. There's a stranded polygroup here. Let's just fix that first. It's kind of like the same. Need to go back and change this first before I move on. All right, let's go back to the first subdivision level. Go to the C modeler, and I'm going to right click, go to polygroup, polygroup, single polygon, click on that. Yes, delete higher, doesn't matter. Whoops. I don't know what I did. I think I lost it. No. Oh no, here we go. I thought I lost it. Um, yeah, so click on that. I think we are missing just a line in here. That was the problem. Anyway, you won't be able to see that much. So let's hide this. You can hide it now. So let's go ahead and divide this again a few times. I'm gonna hide this and the rest. All right, we're back in business. Yeah, so let's select the brush that we're using. Let's paint everything. We have to set the palette again. So let's start with that. Shift S, drop it in the canvas, come back to whatever we were doing. I don't know what happened there, but we'll be fine now. All right, so we have the like the frame is red. Let's invert that selection. Oops. And this is going to be a reflection of the sky. The top bit isn't going to be hidden, so you won't even be able to see that. Not to worry about that. All right, I'm going to mask everything, bring everything back, unmask, hide the mask, pretty much what I've been doing. And I just want to bring everything to have an idea of if the color is working. I want to paint a bit of shadow, like darker blues, so that affects a better reflection. And because I have the mask, I'm not affecting everything else. Oops, that's too much. Smaller size, less intensity. All right, I think that works. I mean, we can spend more time, but want to finish up the rest of the assets. I'm gonna go into the door, go into solo mode, frame that. Let's have a look. So let's try to compensate the color. So the door, I think, is gonna be red, and the rocks are gonna be kind of like painted as well. So let's start with that. Let's start with a color like this. Solo mode. It's gonna, oops, again. Subdivide. 100. Let's do 500,000. So this one is gonna be quite detailed. All right. Now let's clear this first. So let's make the reflections. There we go. And clear the mask. Let's do the door. So everything that's part of that frame. Yep. Mask it, invert the mask, and hide it. Hang on. No, it's fine. Mask it, and then we're gonna make it red so that it generates some contrast with that first part of the tower that is not red. All right, and I'm just gonna add some texture details using the same approach that I've been using. Maybe more RGB intensity. This is kind of like faking some wood planks. Darker towards the borders. All right. I think I'm happy with that. Let's go ahead and do what we did. I think the bricks are fine. We just need to isolate them. So let's hide everything but the bricks. Invert the mask, hide the mask, and we can actually use some of the colors that we already applied towards the board. Let's do a quick save as well. Let me check the chat. There was a big lag before your tablet stopped. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know why that is. How many hours did you spend on ZBrush to master it like that? A long time. I don't know how many hours. I've been doing it for years. Are you using any reference? No, not a specific reference. I just have some ideas in my head, but not a specific. I'm not trying to copy anything. I just, the strips, the red and creamy or red and white stripes are kind of like what I, remember. Like the visual library in my head is kind of like this, so I'm just going for that. Does Keyshot requires UVs? Nope, not at all. Nice how it's called the palette window, awesome feature. The palette window is not a palette window; it's just dropping something in the canvas. So there's no dedicated palette for this. You can just drop anything. Cool. All right. So let me just wrap up this with a few tweaks in the color. All right. Now there's another thing that you can do. Pretty annoying. Go into this one. Go into, oops, subdivided. And this is, I'm gonna keep this one pretty fairly unamusing. Just a dark color here for the stairs. And we can just add a tiny bit of highlight. Some wear and tear basically. All right. So there's something else that you can do, which is pretty cool actually, which is using the masking tools just to add some highlights. I'm not gonna do that because that's just another process, and I think we're just going by. I mean, we're doing fine without it. Let's go ahead and again quick save, and I'm gonna paint the rocks really quickly. And for that, I'm gonna use the masking tools that I'm talking about. Then we can just do some fiber mesh and wrap it up. We have about 15 minutes, so let's just do that really quickly. I'm gonna select the base line. Again, let's try to keep it simple. So fill object. I'm just clicking fill object a few times because we have the RGB set to a very low value. That's kind of like the color that I'm going for. It'd be darker in certain areas. I'm not gonna subdivide this. I'm just gonna take advantage of those, very, very randomly distributed polygons to create something interesting. Obviously, for the earth tones, it's gonna be a bit more saturated and darker. And I kind of like this, and this is what I meant about not subdividing it, because this is a decimated object. It has an uneven distribution of points, basically. So that's gonna give us this kind of like interesting pattern without subdividing it. So there's no need for that. Okay, and of course, bringing everything together and refine the position of it. Not the position, sorry, the distribution of the colors. So it's going to be a bit lighter, where maybe the lighthouse man walks a tiny bit more of green color. Very subtle patches of green. You know what? The patches of greens, they're not working for me. Get rid of that. I'm gonna keep the palette quite simple. Alrighty. So that's cool. That's the I just go back and forth between, you know, when I think I'm ready and I think something's finished, I just look at it from a different angle and go like, no, you know what, you can keep working on it. All right, I think that's better. All right, let's go to the rocks. This one's gonna be pretty simple as well. So I'm gonna select a rocky color, fill object. Actually, let's just turn on RGB to 100 so it's quick. There we go. And let's go to let's do the same thing for the rest of the rocks. Fill object, and the tiny ones as well, fill object. All right, and now let's go back to the main rocks. And I'm gonna open up the masking palette, and here's where we can have some fun with some of these features. I'm gonna click on the cavity. So click on cavity, is just gonna mask out certain areas, which is pretty useful. If we invert it, hide the mask, we can select a darker color, a bit more saturated as well. Fill object, clear the mask, and now we have that poly painted there, which is pretty cool. We can also use the smoothness, and I do this all the time. Increase the range, maybe decrease the range actually, and decrease the fall off. All right, invert that mask. Not invert it, just leave it as it is. And we can go for a lighter color. Right, so you see we just generated a few variations really quickly using the masking tools. The peaks and valleys are also very handy. It's going to be hard to see the effect. I'm actually going to increase the coverage or decrease it. So 12, sharpen. All right, I'm gonna go for a lighter color, saturated. Oops, no, that's too much. I think I'm just gonna leave it as it is. I'm gonna do another cavity. Invert, make sure that I have the darker colors all blocked in. And we can also go ahead and change the alpha, or let's leave it the alpha as it is and just change the color spray so the stroke is different. Nope, let's change to just spray so there's no difference in color. And let's tweak the intensity again. I'm gonna go for a more earthy tone. And this is just gonna semi-randomly, because we're still using the, we're still manually trying to target certain areas, but I'm going to add a few variations in color. Pretty cool. All right. To bring everything together, I'm going to start toning down the darkness of these rocks a bit, especially towards the top. Let's try to blend it a little bit more with the surroundings in a way. And it's coming along nicely. I mean, I would probably go ahead and refine the border a little bit more because the rocks are like too high. So I can just take these. Actually, let's do that really quickly. It's bothering me a bit. The fact that it looks like an avocado. So an unhealthy avocado. So I just want to pull this out. I was going to do this at the end, but I want to show you guys what the intention is. And we can push things down a bit so that there's some like intersecting rocks as well. That makes more sense, right? And we can take the rocks and pull them up. There's some of them are intersecting that piece of land that floated about. All right, I'm gonna do a quick save, and also I'm gonna select the other rocks and do a quick pass as well with the poly paint. Wait until ZBrush saves this. There we go. We have about 5 minutes, so I reckon I'm just gonna do this really quickly, and then if you guys have any questions, I'll get to that. Right, so peaks and valleys, sharpen. There's not showing much. I'm just gonna go and manually paint these ones a bit. I'm gonna change the alpha to alpha 8 to add more variation in this one that are kind of like more featured rocks. Very easy to understand that, you know, I mean, they're very, yeah, very featured, as in, because they're separated from the bunch, from the other rocks. You will probably, maybe your eye would spend more time reading those than the rest. So it's gonna give it a tiny bit more of variation there, so it looks more complex. Select the tiny ones. Tiny ones are going to be probably the tiny ones don't need much color variation. Something like that. Here at the bottom. All right, so I think we're ready to wrap this up. Right. So I think this is looking good. Kind of like the idea of the floating island. I'm gonna do a quick fiber mesh just to top it all up. We have 4 minutes, so yeah, we'll do that. I'm gonna select the land, solo mode. I don't know if we have, no, we don't have polygroups. I'm just gonna hide everything but the bottom. So I think this is good. This is a good piece. Although we can actually hide a bit more of it. Let's leave it as it is. Going to solo mode, and I'm gonna bring in fiber mesh, and this is gonna be pretty stylized. So don't expect like a lot of grass, but I'm just gonna click preview. Whoops! I'm gonna turn off double so that it doesn't do it in both sides. Let's preview. Reduce the number of fibers. I'm gonna change the, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna change the base on the tip, but ultimately I'm gonna take the color from the base, and you can just do that by changing this base color and base and tip color. Set it to 0 so that it doesn't use these colors, these swatches. It actually uses the color from the poly paint underneath. You just need to have at least one of these at 0, let's say 0.05. Right? So we have this color. Get a bit closer. And we need actually be quite small in comparison to the rest. I think this one is fine, just some large pieces. And increase the coverage. And I'm gonna increase the gravity as well. And also change the tips. I'm just doing this very quickly. If you wanna have a bit more of something more about fiber mesh, there's other streams where I cover a lot of fiber mesh. This one is just to generate something quickly. And we can also use the H tangent and the V tangent. That should help us sort of flatten things a bit more randomly like this, which is pretty cool. All right, and I think let's change the coverage a tiny bit more. Bit more fibers. No, it's all good. All right, and I think we are getting there. I'm just gonna click accept. Would you like to? Yes. Or let's just click yes. So I have the preview. I'm gonna go ahead and bring back the rest of my island, right? And with the fiber mesh, what we can do is just add a tiny bit of color variation just on the fibers, so that it's not as obvious. Let's go ahead and go to the fiber mesh palette, and we can turn off the fast preview so we can see what we're doing. Going to solo mode, and with the color, I'm just gonna select a darker color here and just paint randomly some colors here. Darker. It's kind of like it's not grass. It's kind of like that wheat color. I don't know exactly what this is, but I don't want to change the palette. I want to keep the palette quite constrained to that little square that I did there. All right. So I think we are done with this a tiny little self-contained project, but I think it looks all right. I'm gonna go ahead and do a quick render. Turn off the floor. Now the next trick for me would be to find the right angle, but we'll do that. I'll do that afterwards. I think this is fine. Let's click PPR. Oh, one thing is I'm gonna make sure I don't have the side subdivision is fine in the because the rendering is giving me the thick fiber mesh. So I want to make sure that here in the BPR settings is set to 2, so that it just gives me flat polygons, which is what I need. Let's try that again. All right, that's looking good. We can actually go to the light, do some little tweaks here on the light. To get a bit more of a, I don't know, let's see. That's actually not bad. I'm getting a nice cast shadow from the windows there. All right, I think this works. This works for me. Let's do a quick save. I'll probably have to do another BPR render. And I probably should have turned off the undo history. I don't want to save to history. All right, I think I'm going to leave it here, guys. Let's just have a look and see if there's any questions that I can answer. Last minute question. Second month on this one model. How long would a scene like this take in your VR program? Probably not as long. Probably really quick. It's not gonna be just setting up the kind of like the blocking in the VR is super easy. It's really easy. Whether or not that's gonna work for a more applying polypaint and that sort of thing, I would doubt it. I'm actually currently working on refining a workflow to go from VR to ZBrush, and it's looking pretty good. But once I fine tune it a little bit more, I will share it in the ZBrush guides. What about VR live stream? I don't know how would that work. I'm currently working on the tutorial, so let's start with the tutorial. If you guys want to see something else after the tutorial, we'll figure something out. But I don't know how VR live stream would work really. El Renderman, thank you so much. No worries. Can I leave there? This was very interesting, informative. No worries. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you for stopping by, and I will see you next week, hopefully. I know that there is. I have to double check the schedule, but I know there is probably another See Friends stream coming soon with Ana Carolina. I'm not sure if Steven will be there, but we'll see. We'll see how we go. We have to still plan that out. Yeah, I'll see. If not, if anything, I'll be here next week. And yeah, that's it. Take care, and I hope you liked the stream today, and thanks for stopping by. Cheers, guys. Bye.